The ceremony hall falls silent. That is what Marin remembers most. Not the cold marble beneath her bare knees, not the torn fabric of her ceremonial dress, not even the laughter. The silence that came before it. Her sister Corinna stands on the dais above her, golden hair catching candlelight, lips curved into a smile that holds no warmth. "Look at her," Corinna says, her voice carrying across the gathered crowd. "Broken and worthless, this is what our bloodline has produced. This is what my betrothed rejected." The laughter begins then, soft at first, then spreading like fire through dry grass. Marin keeps her eyes fixed on the stone floor. She will not cry. She will not give them that. The doors at the far end of the hall crash open. The laughter stops as if cut with a blade. Footsteps echo through the chamber. Heavy, deliberate. The kind of footsteps that belong to someone who has never learned to doubt his own power. Marin does not look up. She already knows who it is. Everyone knows. Alpha Caius of Ashenmore, conqueror of the Northern Territories, the man whose name mothers whisper to frighten children into obedience. She expects him to walk past her, to conduct whatever business brought him here while she kneels in her shame like forgotten debris. Instead, the footsteps stop directly in front of her. A hand appears in her vision, scarred, large, steady. "Get up," he says. His voice is rough, commanding, but the hand remains extended, palm open, waiting. The crowd forgets how to breathe. Because the question on everyone's mind is suddenly the same. Why would the most ruthless alpha in the realm stop for one broken woman no one else would even look at? Marin's knees had gone numb 3 hours ago. That was probably a mercy. If she could still feel them, she would also feel the cold seeping through the thin ceremonial shift they had dressed her in this morning. She would feel the places where the fabric had torn when Corinna's guards had dragged her from the preparation chamber to the center of the hall. She would feel all of it, and she might break. So the numbness was fine. The numbness was a gift. The ceremony had been meant for her. That was the cruelest part. 3 months ago, she had stood in this very hall while her mother announced her betrothal to Valdric of the Eastern Shore. A political alliance, a merger of territories. Marin had not loved Valdric, but she had been prepared to try. Then Corinna had smiled at Valdric across a banquet table, and everything had changed. Marin shifted her weight carefully. Her wrists ached where the ceremonial bindings cut into her skin. A symbol of her disgrace. A woman rejected by her betrothed was meant to kneel in supplication before the pack until someone claimed her or Dawn came. If Dawn came first, she would be cast out. Packless. Alone. She had been kneeling since sunset. The windows showed nothing but darkness now. She always was defective, her mother Nerida was saying somewhere above her. I blame her father's bloodline, weak stock. Marin did not flinch. She had heard variations of this her entire life. Corinna was the beauty, the strong one, the daughter who had shifted at 12 while Marin had struggled until she was nearly 17. Corinna commanded rooms. Marin merely existed in them. Perhaps someone will take pity on her, another voice murmured. A widower, perhaps. Someone desperate enough. Soft laughter rippled through the crowd. Marin kept her eyes fixed on the floor. The marble was veined with gold. She had counted the veins 17 times. It was something to do, something to keep her mind from the alternative. If no one claimed her by dawn, she would have nothing. No pack, no territory, no protection. The hall doors groaned. A different sound than the usual coming and going, something heavier. The murmuring stopped. Marin heard it then. Footsteps that seemed to command the very air to part. A presence that pressed against her senses even before she saw its source. Wolf. Power. Something ancient and barely contained. Alpha Caius. Someone breathed. What is he doing here? The footsteps continued. past the clusters of nobles, past her mother's rigid form, past Corinna's suddenly uncertain smile. They stopped directly before Marin. She should look up. Protocol demanded it. When an alpha stood before you, you met his eyes or you submitted. There was no in between. Marin could not make herself move. A hand entered her vision, scarred across the knuckles, broad and steady. "Get up," he said. His voice was rough, not cruel, just rough, like something that had been weathered by storms and never quite smoothed again. Marin raised her head slowly. He was younger than she expected. The stories made him sound ancient, some immortal force of destruction. But the man standing before her could not be more than 30. Dark hair fell past his shoulders. His jaw was sharp, shadowed with stubble. Scars crossed his face, one through his eyebrow, another along his throat. But his eyes caught her. Gray, pale and cold as winter ice, watching her with an intensity that made her wolf stir for the first time in months. I said, "Get up." He had not withdrawn his hand. "Your Majesty." Narita's voice cut through the silence, sharp, diplomatic. "This woman is under judgment. Pack law requires—" "I am aware of your laws." He did not look away from Marin. "I am also aware that any alpha present may claim her." The silence that followed was absolute. Corinna stepped forward. "Surely you cannot mean—" "I do not recall addressing you." His voice could have frozen fire. Marin stared at his extended hand. Her mind could not make sense of what was happening. "Why?" The word escaped before she could stop it. Something flickered across his face, gone before she could name it. "Because I have need of you," he said simply. "Take my hand and you leave with me. Refuse, and you remain here to face whatever fate your pack has planned." Marin looked at his hand, scarred, steady, waiting. She looked at her mother's face, cold and closed, at Corinna's barely concealed fury, at the crowd that had laughed while she knelt. She took his hand. He had spent 2 years searching for her. Caius guided the woman, Marin, her mother had called her, through the corridors of Thornwick Hall with a hand barely touching her elbow. She moved like something wounded. Careful steps. Shoulders curved inward. Eyes fixed straight ahead. She had not spoken since accepting his hand. That was fine. He was not particularly interested in conversation. The journals had been clear. Found in the ruins of Valdros 2 years ago, hidden beneath the floorboards of a burned cottage. The writings of a man named Arvan, who had spent his entire life protecting a secret bloodline. A daughter, sent to Thornwick for safety. A child with powers that most believed were merely legend. Caius had burned every copy of those journals, destroyed every record. And then he had begun searching. The intelligence about Nerita's treason had given him the excuse he needed. She had been selling information to the Southern Coalition for years, troop movements, territory weaknesses, the kind of intelligence that had gotten 3 of his border patrols killed in the last month alone. He had come to Thornwick to investigate, to confirm, to decide whether the territory needed to be conquered or simply burned to ash. But his true purpose had always been finding her. He had not expected to find her on her knees in the center of the hall, dressed in rags, surrounded by wolves who looked at her like she was already dead. Caius had seen that look before, on the faces of prisoners, on the faces of the conquered, on his own face, once, a long time ago. And then her sister had laughed, and something in his chest had twisted in a way he did not care to examine. "We ride within the hour," he said as they reached the outer courtyard. His wolves waited there, 12 of them, already mounted and armed. "Can you shift?" Marin's step faltered. Yes." "Good. We have 3 days of travel ahead. It will be faster in wolf form." She nodded but said nothing. Her amber gaze moved across his wolves with something that might have been fear, or might have been calculation. He could not tell. Interesting. Most people trembled when they saw his guard. The wolves of Ashenmore were not chosen for their gentle dispositions. They were chosen because they were the most vicious, the most loyal, the most willing to kill at his command. This woman simply looked at them like she was memorizing their positions. "You have questions," Caius said. It was not a question. Marin met his eyes. That same direct gaze she had given him in the ceremony hall. No submission in it. No fear. Just a kind of weary wariness, like someone waiting for the next blow to fall. "You said you had need of me," she said. "I am trying to understand what that means." "It means what I said." "And if I do not wish to be needed?" Caius felt something shift in his expression. Surprise, perhaps. He could not remember the last time someone had spoken to him like that. Like he was merely a man and not the monster parents warned their children about. "Then you may return to Thornwick," he said carefully, "and take your chances with whatever your mother has planned." Marin's jaw tightened. She looked back at the hall behind them, its windows glowing with warm candlelight. Caius knew better. He had seen the way Nerita looked at her younger daughter, like she was a problem to be solved. "Ashenmore." Marin said the word like she was testing its weight. "They say you have conquered 7 territories in 5 years." "I have." "They say you have never lost a battle." "I have not." She turned back to face him. The moonlight caught her features, and Caius found himself noticing details he had missed in the ceremony hall. High cheekbones, a strong jaw, eyes the color of warm amber, flecked with gold. She was beautiful, he realized. Not in the obvious way her sister was beautiful, all golden hair and calculated smiles. Something quieter, something that had been systematically crushed, but not quite extinguished. "Why me?" she asked again. There were a dozen unmated females in that hall, daughters of powerful families, political advantages. Why choose the one everyone had already discarded? Caius considered his answer. The truth was complicated. The truth involved journals and prophecies, and a war that was coming whether anyone acknowledged it or not. "Because you survived," he said finally. "That hall was designed to break you. Your family wanted you broken. And you knelt there for hours, and you did not break." Something moved across her face. Pain, maybe, or recognition. "I can use someone who does not break," Caius continued. "Ashenmore needs strength. Not the kind that comes from bloodlines or politics, the kind that comes from refusing to surrender." She stared at him for a long moment. "All right," she said softly. "Take me to Ashenmore." Behind them, a curtain twitched in one of Thornwick's high windows. Caius did not need to look to know who was watching. This was not over. It was only beginning. Ashenmore was nothing like Marin had expected. The stories described a fortress of black stone rising from barren wasteland, a place where prisoners were sent to disappear. The reality was something else entirely. Mountains rose on all sides, their peaks still crowned with snow despite the warming season. The valley between them was green and wild, thick with forests that smelled of pine and running water. The fortress itself was built into the mountainside, dark stone, yes, but softened by climbing vines and warmed by what seemed like 100 windows glowing with firelight. "This is Ashenmore?" Marin heard herself say. Beside her, one of Caius's wolves, a scarred woman named Brinna, who had not said more than 10 words in 3 days, made a sound that might have been amusement. "What were you expecting?" Brinna asked. "Skulls on pikes?" "Something like that?" "There were skulls once." Brinna's voice was matter of fact. "The old Alpha liked them. Caius tore them down his first week." Marin filed that information away. She had been filing everything away, every scrap of detail about the man who now technically owned her life. He was not what she had expected either. On the 3-day journey, Caius had been distant but not cruel. He had ensured she ate before his wolves did. He had given her his own cloak when the mountain passes turned cold. He had answered her questions with the same rough honesty he had shown that first night. But he had also maintained a careful distance. No casual touches, no demands. He treated her with a kind of wary respect, like she was something fragile he was afraid of breaking. The fortress gates opened as they approached. Guards lined the entrance, all of them snapping to attention as Caius passed. Their eyes moved to Marin with open curiosity, but no one spoke. "Word travels fast," Brenna murmured. "The whole territory probably knows by now." "Knows what?" "That the Alpha finally took a mate." Brenna's scarred face twisted into something approaching a smile. "They have been placing bets for years." They dismounted in a courtyard bustling with activity. Servants moved with practiced efficiency. Wolves in human form trained with wooden swords in a sectioned-off area. Children darted between legs, laughing. Children, laughing. In the territory of the most feared Alpha in the realm. "You seem surprised," Caius said. He had appeared beside her without warning, moving silently despite his size. "I was told Ashenmore was a place people came to die." "Some do." His voice was flat. "Those who threaten what I protect." He paused. "But death is not the purpose. It is merely a consequence." Before Marin could respond, a commotion erupted near the main doors. Raised voices. The sound of something breaking. A woman burst into the courtyard, golden hair streaming behind her, travel cloak still dusted with road dirt. Marin's blood went cold. "Corinna." "Sister!" Corinna's voice rang out, sharp and sweet as poisoned honey. "Thank the gods I found you. Mother was beside herself when you disappeared." The courtyard had gone silent. Every eye was fixed on the scene unfolding. Corinna swept toward them, all graceful concern and sisterly devotion. Anyone watching would see a loving sibling desperate to reunite with her lost family member. Marin saw the triumph barely hidden behind her sister's eyes. "I am not returning," Marin said. Her voice came out steadier than she felt. Corinna's expression flickered. "But surely this has all been a misunderstanding." She turned to Caius, her voice dropping into something softer. "Your Majesty, I apologize for whatever confusion led to this situation. My sister has always been troubled." "Troubled?" Caius's voice could have cut glass. "Is that what you call leaving her on her knees for hours while your pack laughed?" Something dangerous flickered across Corinna's face. "I see." Corinna's voice had lost its warmth. "And my sister has convinced you of something. She has always been skilled at playing the victim." "Enough." Caius did not raise his voice. He did not need to. "You are in my territory now. Here, my word is law. Marin remains." "For how long?" Corinna's mask had cracked completely now. "Until you grow bored? Until you see what everyone else already knows? She is nothing. She has always been nothing." "Perhaps." Caius stepped forward, and Corinna actually stepped back. "But nothing is mine now, and I protect what is mine." He turned to Brenna. "See that our guest is given accommodation in the East Tower. She may remain one night to rest before beginning her journey home." "The East Tower?" Corinna's voice pitched upward. "That is practically a prison cell." "It is exactly a prison cell." Caius's smile held no warmth. "Be grateful I am not putting you in the cells beneath it." The guards led her away. Marin stood very still, her heart hammering against her ribs. But as she watched her sister disappear into the fortress, she could not shake the feeling that Corinna's arrival was not desperation. It was the first move in a game Marin did not yet understand. 3 weeks passed, and Marin began to wonder if she had stepped into someone else's life. At Thornwick, her days had followed a rigid pattern: wake before dawn, attend her mother's endless meetings as a silent observer, endure Corinna's casual cruelties, eat alone, sleep, repeat. At Ashenmore, no one told her what to do. At first, the freedom had been disorienting. She wandered the fortress like a ghost, expecting at any moment for someone to appear and assign her a place, a duty, a corner to occupy quietly until she was needed. No one did. Instead, she found herself drawn to the training yards, to the kitchens where a one-eyed cook named Thessaly let her help knead bread, to the library, a vast chamber carved directly into the mountain, and increasingly, to wherever Caius happened to be. She told herself it was curiosity. She needed to understand the man who had claimed her, his motivations, his weaknesses. That was the lie she kept repeating anyway. The truth was simpler and more dangerous. She liked watching him. Caius in the training yard was a revelation. He sparred with his wolves every morning, stripped to the waist, moving with a brutal grace that made her mouth go dry. He never pulled his strikes. Neither did his opponents. And yet, when a younger wolf stumbled and fell, Caius extended that same weathered hand he had offered Maren, helping the boy to his feet, with gruff encouragement. Caius with the children was something else entirely. Maren had discovered this by accident. She had been walking the outer corridors when she heard laughter coming from the eastern garden. Curious, she had followed the sound and found the Alpha of Ashenmore sitting cross-legged in the dirt, while a group of children climbed over him like he was furniture. A little girl with wild dark curls was braiding flowers into his hair. Caius had looked up and caught Maren staring. Something flickered across his face. Embarrassment, perhaps, but he did not move. Simply held her gaze with those winter-colored eyes until Maren felt heat climb up her neck. She had fled, like a coward. Now, 3 weeks later, she was hiding in the library when the door opened and Caius walked in. "You are avoiding me," he said. Maren did not look up from her book. "I am reading." "You have been reading that same page for 20 minutes. She felt her face warm. "It is a complicated passage." Caius crossed the room and dropped into the chair across from her. "Your sister left shortly after you arrived," he said. "I am aware." "You have not asked what we discussed before her departure." Maren finally looked up. His expression gave nothing away, but his storm-gray stare was watching her with careful intensity. "Would you tell me if I asked?" "Yes." The simple honesty of it caught her off guard. "What did you discuss?" she asked. "Your mother's activities, her connections to the Southern Coalition, the intelligence she has been selling that has cost me soldiers and territory." Maren went very still. "My mother is a traitor?" "Your mother is many things." His voice was flat. "Traitor is merely the most recent." She should feel shocked. She should feel some loyalty, some defense of the woman who had raised her. She felt nothing but cold recognition. Of course Nerida was selling secrets. It was exactly what Maren should have expected. "Is that why you took me?" Maren asked quietly. "Leverage against my mother?" Caius leaned forward, close enough that she could smell pine and wood smoke. "If I wanted leverage, I would have taken your sister. Nerida actually cares about that one." The words should have hurt. They did hurt, somewhere deep and familiar. But they were also true. Then why? Caius held her gaze. Something shifted in his expression, the careful walls he maintained cracking just slightly. "I told you already, because you did not break." "That cannot be the only reason." "It is not." He paused. "But the other reasons are complicated." "Complicated how?" He stood abruptly, moving to the window. His back was to her now, shoulders tense. "There are things I have not told you. About why I was at Thornwick that night. About what I was looking for." He turned back to face her. "About what I found." Maren's heart was beating too fast. "What did you find?" Caius opened his mouth. The door burst open. Brenna stood in the entrance, breathing hard, her scarred face pale. "Alpha, we intercepted a messenger from the Southern Coalition. You need to see this immediately." Caius's expression shuttered closed. The moment, whatever it had been, was gone. We will finish this conversation, he said to Maren. A promise or a warning, she could not tell. Then he was gone. The intercepted message confirmed what Caius had suspected for months. War was coming. He stood in his war chamber, the parchment crumpled in his fist, staring at the map spread across the table. The Southern Coalition had been quiet for 2 years, licking their wounds after his conquest of Greymarch. He had hoped they would stay quiet. Hope was for fools. They are massing at the Thornwood border, Brenna said. 3,000 wolves, maybe more. Training exercises do not require supply wagons for a 6-month campaign. No, they do not. Caius exhaled slowly. 3,000 wolves. He had perhaps 2,000 that could be fielded immediately. There is more, Brenna said. Her voice had taken on a careful quality. The intelligence mentions a name. She handed him another document. Caius read it, then read it again. The paper crumpled in his fist. Leave me, he said. Brenna hesitated, then withdrew. Caius stood alone, his blood roaring in his ears. The Thornwick asset confirms the target remains unaware of her value. Proceed with extraction at the earliest opportunity. The bloodline must be secured. The Thornwick asset. Nerita. Selling information about her own daughter. Maren. Caius moved to the window, pressing his forehead against the cold glass. His wolf was pacing inside his chest, restless, angry, and territorial. Mine, the wolf insisted. She is mine. He had not allowed himself to think that way. From the moment he had taken her hand in that ceremony hall, he had maintained careful boundaries. She was under his protection. She was not his possession. But the boundaries were crumbling. 3 weeks of watching her move through his fortress. 3 weeks of seeing her slowly unfurl, like a flower finally finding sunlight. 3 weeks of catching her watching him when she thought he was not looking. 3 weeks of wanting something he had no right to want. And now this. The Southern Coalition wanted her specifically. The intelligence mentioned a bloodline, which meant this was not about leverage. This was about something in Maren's blood, something valuable enough to start a war over. He needed to tell her. The door opened. Caius turned sharply and found Maren standing in the doorway. Brenna said you needed to be alone, Maren said. But you also looked like you needed to not be alone. I decided Brenna was wrong. Despite everything, Caius almost smiled. You are developing a habit of defiance. I am developing a habit of doing what I think is right. She stepped inside. What happened? War is coming, he said. The Southern Coalition is massing. They will march within the month. You have known this was possible. Yes. He paused. What I did not know was that they are coming specifically for you. Silence. She moved closer. For me. Why would anyone start a war for me? Caius closed his eyes. Tell her. Tell her everything. Your father, he said quietly. He was not from Thornwick originally. He came from a territory called Valdros, in the far north. A territory that was destroyed 20 years ago. I know, Maren said. He died when I was young. Valdros was not just a territory. It was a sanctuary. A place where certain bloodlines were protected. Bloodlines that carried ancient gifts. Powers that most believe are merely legend. Maren's face had gone pale. What kind of powers? The ability to heal any wound, to purify any corruption. He paused. The bloodline of the moon priestesses, thought to be extinct for a century. She shook her head slowly. That is a story, a myth. Your father did not think so. He spent his entire life hiding you, protecting you from those who would use your blood for their own purposes. Caius's voice dropped. Including your mother. My mother knew? Your mother has known since the day she married your father. She has been selling that information, piece by piece, to the highest bidder. Maren's breathing had gone shallow. You knew. she whispered. Before you came to Thornwick, you knew what I was. Caius held her gaze, forced himself not to look away. Yes. The ceremony. Finding me on my knees. All of it. Her voice cracked. It was not chance. You came looking for me. Yes. She took a step back. Why? The word came out broken. Why pretend? Why make me think you saw something in me worth saving when all you saw was a weapon? That is not... Then what? Tears were streaming down her face now. Tell me what you saw, Caius. He reached for her. She flinched away. The rejection hit him like a physical blow. Marin, don't. She was backing toward the door. Don't touch me. I cannot. She turned and fled. Caius stood alone in the war chamber, watching the door swing closed, feeling something inside him shatter. Marin ran. She did not know where she was going. It did not matter. She needed to move, needed to outrun the storm building inside her chest. She found herself in the eastern garden, the same garden where she had watched Caius let children braid flowers into his hair. The same garden where she had first allowed herself to hope. The hope had been a lie. Marin sank onto a stone bench and allowed herself to break. The sobs came from somewhere deep and raw. She cried for her father, the man she barely remembered, who had apparently spent his entire life protecting her. She cried for herself, the girl who had knelt on cold marble believing her only crime was being less than her sister. She cried for the fragile, foolish thing that had been growing in her chest every time Caius looked at her. I thought he saw me, she thought. I thought, finally, someone saw me. You are going to freeze out here. Marin's head snapped up. A woman stood at the garden entrance. Older, perhaps 50, with silver-streaked dark hair and a face that might have been carved from weathered stone. Who are you? Marin asked, her voice rough. Savannah. The woman sat on the bench beside her, uninvited. I was Caius's nursemaid when he was a boy. Marin said nothing. He told you about your father, Savannah said. He told me I am a weapon he came to collect. Did he say that? Those exact words? The meaning was clear enough. Savannah made a sound that might have been a laugh. Child, if you think the meaning was clear, then you understood nothing. Anger flared in Marin's chest. He admitted he knew what I was before he came. He admitted he came looking for me specifically. How else am I supposed to understand that? Perhaps by asking why a man who has never wanted anything for himself would travel 300 miles on the chance of finding one woman. Marin stared at her. He read your father's journals, Savannah continued. Found them in the ruins of Valdros 2 years ago. He could have sold that information, could have traded it for alliances, for power. Do you know what he did instead? What? He burned every copy, destroyed every record. And then he spent 2 years trying to find the daughter Arvon had written about. Not to use her. To protect her. Marin's heart was pounding. He made a mistake, Savannah said quietly. He should have told you the truth from the beginning. But he was afraid. Afraid that if you knew why he came for you, you would never believe that he stayed for a different reason entirely. What reason? Savannah looked at her with something that might have been compassion. Because somewhere in those 3 weeks, he stopped seeing a mission and started seeing a woman he would tear the world apart to keep safe. She left. Marin sat alone in the garden, her mind spinning. She thought about Caius sparring with his wolves, extending that calloused palm to help a fallen boy. She thought about him letting children braid flowers into his hair. She thought about the crack in his voice when she had pulled away. Marin. He had sounded wounded. Genuinely wounded. Could a man who only saw her as a weapon sound like that? She stood on shaking legs. She needed to talk to Caius. She was halfway back to the fortress when Brenna appeared, running toward her with an expression that made Marin's blood freeze. What is it? Marin demanded. Brenna grabbed her arm. It is Caius. Something is wrong. He collapsed in the war chamber. She swallowed. He is not waking up. Maren started to run. The healers did not know what was wrong. Maren stood in the doorway of Caius's chambers, watching them move around his unconscious form. They checked his pulse. They listened to his breathing. They exchanged looks of increasing alarm. None of it helped. Caius lay motionless on the bed, his skin pale and sheened with sweat. His breathing came in shallow, irregular gasps. Every few minutes his body would jerk, muscles spasming, and then go still again. He looked like he was dying. It is not a natural illness, the head healer, a thin woman named Oressa, said quietly. His body is fighting something. Poison, perhaps, but nothing I recognize. Maren thought suddenly of the unfamiliar servant she had noticed 2 days ago, the one who had brought Caius wine during a council meeting. The servant had vanished afterward, never to be seen again. Corinna. She had never truly left. Can you help him? Maren's voice came out steadier than she felt. Oressa's silence was answer enough. Maren moved to the bedside and took his hand. It was ice cold. You cannot die, she whispered. We have not finished our conversation. Hours passed. Maren refused to leave. Night fell. The healers continued their work, trying remedy after remedy. She was nearly asleep when the door opened. A servant she did not recognize slipped into the room. Young, dark-haired, with nervous eyes. My lady, the servant whispered. There is someone at the eastern gate asking for you. She says she can help him. She says she has the antidote. Hope flared in Maren's chest. Why would she only give it to me? I do not know, my lady. Maren looked at Caius, at his ashen face, at the blue tinge around his lips. He was running out of time. She should tell Brenna, should tell the guards. But every minute she spent following protocol was a minute Caius might not have. Take me to her, Maren said. The servant led her through corridors Maren had never seen, down staircases that descended forever into the mountain. The air grew colder. The torches grew fewer. Maren's wolf stirred uneasily. They emerged through a small door into a hidden courtyard outside the main fortress walls. A figure waited there, cloaked and hooded. You came, the figure said. I was not certain you would. The voice was too familiar, too smooth. Maren's blood went cold. The figure lowered her hood. Corinna smiled. Hello, sister. The servant had vanished. Likely another of Corinna's planted allies. The door was closed, locked. Maren was alone. How are you here? She demanded. You left weeks ago. I left publicly. Corinna's smile widened. Ashenmore has many hidden paths. Our mother's intelligence was quite thorough. Caius is dying, yes. The poison is called moonshade. It attacks the wolf bond first, then the heart. Without the antidote, he has perhaps until dawn. Give it to me. Whatever you want. Just give me the antidote. I intend to. Corinna withdrew a small vial filled with silver liquid. All you have to do is come with me. Come with you where? South. To people who have been waiting a very long time to meet you. They will use me. They will worship you. You will never be overlooked again. Never be worthless. The words hit somewhere deep and wounded. Corinna saw it. All you have to do, Corinna continued, is walk away. Leave this fortress. Leave him. He was only using you anyway. He was protecting me. He was collecting an asset. Corinna's voice sharpened. Do you really think a man like that could love someone like you? Maren flinched. Corinna extended the vial. Take this. Save him if you want. But then you come with me. Maren stared at the silver liquid. She thought about Caius, about Savannah's words. He stayed for a different reason entirely. If I refuse? Maren asked quietly. Then he dies, and we take you anyway. Marin took the vial. The antidote first, she said. I watch them give it to him. Then I go with you. Corinna studied her, then nodded. Fine. But try anything clever, and his death will be the least painful part of your evening. The antidote worked. Marin watched through a gap in the healer's door as Oressa administered the silver liquid. Watched Caius's breathing steady. Watched the color return to his skin. He would live. She allowed herself one moment of relief. Then Corinna's hand closed around her arm. Time to go. They moved through hidden passages. Corinna knew them well. Marin memorized every turn, every junction. They emerged from the mountain's base into a forest clearing. 6 wolves waited there, armed and armored, bearing the sigil of the Southern Coalition. And behind them, a woman Marin had hoped never to see again. Nerita, daughter. Her mother's voice carried no warmth. I was beginning to think Corinna had failed. She required convincing, Corinna said, shoving Marin forward. For him. Nerita's lip curled. You always were sentimental. Put her in the carriage, Nerita ordered. We leave immediately. 2 guards grabbed Marin's arms. Marin did not resist. She allowed herself to be pushed inside, allowed herself to sit across from her mother. Then she smiled. Nerita's eyes narrowed. What? You made a mistake, Marin said quietly. You let me watch them give him the antidote. You let me see that he would recover. And Caius is not the type to stay unconscious while someone takes what belongs to him. A howl split the night. Not a normal howl. Something deeper. Something that resonated in Marin's bones. An alpha's call. The clearing erupted. Wolves poured from the trees. Ashenmore wolves, Brenna at their head. The coalition guards barely had time to draw weapons before they were overwhelmed. Corinna screamed and tried to run, but Savannah materialized from the shadows and struck her down. Nerita lunged for Marin, fingers curved into claws. Marin was faster. She caught her mother's wrist and twisted. Nerita crashed against the carriage wall, stunned. You should have left me on my knees, Marin said. She kicked the door open and jumped out. There. Caius stood at the tree line, still pale, still clearly weak, operating on willpower alone, but upright and alive, and looking at her with fierce, desperate relief. He had come for her. Marin started toward him. She did not see Nerita emerge from the carriage, did not see the blade, but she heard Caius roar her name, and she felt the impact as he slammed into her, throwing her clear. The blade meant for Marin's heart buried itself in Caius's shoulder instead. He fell to one knee. Marin screamed. Brenna tackled Nerita to the ground. Guards swarmed. Marin was already on her knees beside Caius, pressing her hands against the wound. No, she gasped. You just recovered. You cannot. Had to. His voice was barely a thread. Could not let her. Stop talking. Marin. He caught her wrist. I did not come to Thornwick for your bloodline. Caius. I came because your father's journals described you. How bright you were. How brave. How you deserved more than what your mother would give you. His breath rattled. I came because I wanted to find the woman he described. And when I saw you refusing to break, I knew. Knew what? That I would burn the world to keep you safe. I should have told you. I was afraid. Tears were streaming down her face. You are dying. Probably. Something like a smile crossed his lips. Worth it. It is not worth it. Then do not let me die. His eyes were closing. You are the Moonblood. The healer. He went limp. Marin stared at him. At the blood still flowing. The Moonblood. The healer. She did not know how. She did not even know if the legends were true, but Caius believed. Her father had believed. Maybe that was enough. Marin closed her eyes, pressed her hands against his chest, and reached for something deep inside herself. Light bloomed beneath her palms. Silver light, warm and pure, pouring into his wound. She felt it seeking damage, repairing tissue, purifying the last traces of poison. She felt it draining her too, pulling at her energy, her essence. She gave it anyway. Everything she had, everything she was. For him. The light faded. Marin collapsed. But before consciousness left her, she felt his hand close around hers, and she heard him breathe. Marin woke to sunlight. She was in a bed she did not recognize, soft and warm. Her entire body ached, but it was a distant ache. She was alive. She sat up too fast and immediately regretted it. Easy. Savannah's voice came from her left. You nearly killed yourself pouring that much power into him. You have been unconscious for 3 days. Caius. Marin's voice came out as a croak. Is he? Alive. Recovering. Driving everyone insane because they will not let him out of bed. Savannah held out a cup. Drink. Marin drank. My mother, she said when she finished. Corinna. In the cells. Savannah's voice held grim satisfaction. The coalition forces have withdrawn. It is over? The immediate threat, yes. Savannah paused. Right now, someone has been asking for you quite persistently. The door opened. Caius stood in the entrance, one arm in a sling, his face still too pale, but his eyes bright and fixed on her. You should be in bed, Savannah said. I was in bed. Now I am here. He did not look at her. Only at Marin. Leave us. Savannah left. Caius crossed the room slowly and sat on the edge of her bed. You healed me, he said. Apparently. You nearly died doing it. You nearly died saving me. Something cracked in his expression. All his careful control fell away. I thought I had lost you, he said. His voice was raw. When Brenna told me you were gone, I could barely stand. The poison was still tearing me apart. And none of it mattered. Nothing mattered except getting to you. You came anyway. I would have crawled. He reached out and cupped her face. I would have crawled through fire. Marin leaned into his touch. You said you were afraid of me. I am. His thumb traced her cheekbone. I have conquered territories. I have faced armies, and none of it frightened me the way you do. Why? Because they could only take my life. His forehead dropped to rest against hers. You could take everything else. Marin's heart was pounding. In the clearing, she whispered. You said you would burn the world to keep me safe. I would. And if I asked you not to, then I would find another way. For you, I would find 1,000 other ways. She closed the distance between them. The kiss was gentle at first, tentative, but then his hand slid into her hair, and gentle became something else entirely. When they broke apart, both were breathing hard. Stay, Caius said, not because of politics, not because of bloodlines. He met her eyes. Stay because I love you. Marin kissed him again. Yes, she said against his mouth, to all of it. His arms came around her, holding her like she was something precious. My mother will stand trial, Marin said quietly. Yes. I should feel something about that. What do you feel? Marin considered. Free, she said. I feel free. His arms tightened around her, and for the first time in her life, Marin understood what it meant to be home. 6 months later, the gardens of Ashenmore were in full bloom. Marin stood on the balcony overlooking the courtyard. Children ran between the gardens, their laughter floating up on warm air. Refugees from 3 territories had made their homes here now. Ashenmore had become something different, something more, a sanctuary. You are going to be late for your own ceremony. Brenna appeared beside her. Your mate is pacing a hole in the great hall floor. He paces when he is nervous. He is never nervous. Maren smiled. He is today. The formal mating ceremony had been Caius's idea. You deserve to stand before everyone and know that you were chosen, he had said, deliberately, irrevocably. She had tried to argue. She had not tried very hard. The great hall was transformed, flowers everywhere, nobles and commoners stood together. Savannah stood near the front, dabbing at her eyes with a handkerchief she would later deny owning. And at the far end, Caius waited. He was dressed in formal black, his dark hair pulled back, scars visible and unashamed. He looked like what he was, a conqueror, a warrior. He also looked at Maren like she was the only person in the room. She walked toward him. The ceremony was simple. Words spoken, vows exchanged, a binding that went deeper than law, all the way down to the wolf bond forming between them. I choose you, Caius said, his voice rough with emotion, in this life and whatever comes after. I choose you, Maren answered, not because you saved me, because you saw me, because you kept showing up. He kissed her then, in front of everyone, deep and claiming and entirely inappropriate. The hall erupted in cheers. Later, after the celebration, Maren and Caius stood together on the balcony where she had watched him spar months ago. The moon was full. The territory spread out below them, peaceful and alive. Your mother's exile concluded today, Caius said quietly. She and Corinna both. They leave at dawn. Do you want to see them? Before they go? Maren thought about Corinna's cruel smile, about Nerida's cold eyes, about all the years she had spent believing she was less than them. No, she said, they are part of a life I am finished with. Caius's arm came around her. And this life? He asked. The one you are starting? Maren looked up at him, at the scars, at those storm-gray eyes that still looked at her with wonder. This life, she said, is exactly where I want to be. He smiled, the real smile, the one he gave to no one else. Good, he said, because I have no intention of letting you go. She laughed and leaned into him, and the moon rose over Ashenmore, and somewhere below, a wolf howled in celebration. It sounded like joy. It sounded like home. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed this story. These stories only exist because of you. Because you listen, you comment, you share, and that means more to me than you know. I am so grateful you are here.